It's the part that everyone's afraid to talk about. The animals that die under their watch. And today, I'm going to tell you about all of them. Death is inevitable. It's a sad part of life, and if you have pets, they're all going to die too. Except for Flutie. Flutie's never going to die. We have a deal. And I am no different. I feel like I'm very lucky that I very rarely have sick animals, and unfortunately, most of the time that animals die, they just die when it comes to reptiles. So I want to explain to you exactly how these things happened, what I've noticed, what I would have done differently, and the whole thing is just kind of a, hey, this is what's possible and this is how you can avoid it. And in the comment section below, it might get pretty nasty. I'm pretty aware of that. Let's keep it respectful. I'll explain how all these animals passed and what they meant to me. So let's go chronologically. We'll start in 2019, which is the year that I started this channel, and I had 0 animals die. My first video came out on January 14th, so for the whole year minus 2 weeks, I had a channel. That's where we're starting. No animals died in 2019. But in 2020, we had 1 animal pass away. This was a sad one because this was Zapdos. Zapdos was my first banana ball python. I got this animal in a vlog from May of 2019 at a Reptile Expo. I think it was probably the second Reptile Expo video I ever made in 2019. 80 bucks, got it from a rescue. I bred this animal and produced some beautiful babies. So Zapdos actually has grandchildren now. The banana that you see in this clip, these are the babies that Zapdos produced. And this brings us to our first I don't know, because I don't know what happened. Zapdos was a full, healthy animal, beautiful animal, and I moved him for a breeding purpose from an enclosure to a tub, because I find they breed better in tubs, although I don't keep any ball pythons in tubs full time. So it was feeding day, he was removed from the female, and I opened up the tub to put the female back in, and he was on his back. Gone. He hadn't stopped eating, he wasn't losing any weight, I checked him over, I don't know. I didn't do a necropsy because it was 2019, I had 0 money. And also, I don't really know where to take animals. Now I do. There's a place I know where to take them. But anyway, Zapdos, RIP. No idea what happened. Unfortunately, snakes, they could have cancer or if anything else, and you would never know until it was too late because they generally don't show signs, and Zapdos didn't show any signs of sickness at all. Moving on to 2021, we had 2 animals die. The first one was Sarah the leopard gecko. Sarah was a clutch mate of Littlefoot. Littlefoot was the original mascot on the channel. Sarah was in that clutch in 2017. They grew up together, and how I had Sarah at the time, keep in mind this is 2021, I had her in a rack. I no longer keep geckos in racks, but I did at the time, and I don't think this was the cause of her death at all. She stopped eating, so I took some precautionary measures to make sure she wasn't losing too much weight. Keep in mind, sometimes during breeding season, they will go off of food, but this wasn't that. So I called a vet, I set up an appointment, she lost weight really rapidly, and a few days before the appointment, I opened up the tub and she was gone. So this is another one where I don't know what happened. She was obviously sick, that's why I set up a vet appointment, but I don't know exactly what happened, and this vet that I had the appointment with doesn't look at dead animals. So unfortunately, Sarah is buried in my backyard, and I just don't know what happened. The other animal that died that year was Millie. I actually did a video called Finding Millie because the only animal that I've ever had get out on me was Millie, and it was my fault. I left the bin open. This wasn't why she died, by the way. This was years before. This was in 2019. So she was a feature of a video before. Millie, same thing, sort of. She didn't stop eating. She was completely normal. She was in the middle of a breeding season, didn't have any ill effects, laid 2 eggs, and then about 2 weeks later, looked like she was about to drop another clutch any day now, and she just passed. She died. I did open her up to see if I could salvage the eggs, but they weren't calcified enough, and I couldn't do that. So I don't know if it was a complication from breeding, but she was being bred just like every other leopard gecko, housed just like every other leopard gecko at the time. I don't really know what happened to Millie. Super sad, but those are the only 2 leopard geckos I've ever had pass on me. And keep in mind, I realize this is crazy. Why would you bring attention to all the animals who died? I know it seems like a lot. Oh, this year, this many, and this year, this many. But keep in mind, I've had over 500 animals since starting the channel, from breeders to things I've produced to things that I was babysitting even I would include in here. So the percentage is less than 0.5% of the animals that I've ever kept have passed away. Also, if you have a story about this happening to you, Let me know in the comment section below. I mean, obviously it stinks, but you know it doesn't? Me. Thanks to today's sponsor, Scentbird. Here's the problem with fragrance, because we all like it. We all want to smell good when we go out or even just staying at home. Buying a bottle of the latest fragrance and not knowing if you even like it is expensive. Scentbird takes the guesswork out, and they match your preferences with a new scent every month. This month, I got another Versace. Fantastic. Starfruit, musk, sage, rosewood. These are the things that I like. Scentbird knows that, and every month they send me something that matches the profile I like. Plus, I travel a lot. These things are perfect. We're talking about the case snaps open. You can see what's on the label. Goes inside, snaps together. That's just satisfying of itself. Lock, unlock, and spray. And that's it. And the selection is nearly endless. And over 700 fragrances available, including popular brands like Prada, Versace, and niche labels like Parfum de Marly and Roja. Save money, minimize risk. Plus, affordable. Your first month with my code down below is gonna be $8. And after that, it's only $16.95 for a month. So if you're looking to save, smell good, and be non-committal with what you smell like every single month, hit the link below, scan the QR code, or go to scentbird.com, code 55WWR to get 55% off your first order. In 2023, we saw 3 deaths. The first one was the saddest one, I think, because it was corn. Corn was one of the very first corn snakes I've ever kept on the channel. I think I have an idea what happened. I don't know for sure, but I know Corn, when I got her, I thought that she was, 7 or 8 years old. I knew she was older. I found out much later she was probably closer to 25 years old. This is an animal that was surrendered to a reptile shop, and then I bought from that reptile shop, and I had no idea she was encroaching on 30 years old. And keep in mind, they can last 20 to 30 years. I think she was just at the end of her life. She started to slowly lose weight. She would eat less frequently, turn her nose up at a meal here, but then eat again. And by the time I realized that maybe she was on her way out, I called the veterinarian. They explained the same thing that I'm explaining to you, which is kind of how I came to this theory. I set up an appointment anyway, and unfortunately she passed literally the day that I set up that appointment. So I thought she had much more time. She didn't. It was sad, but she did live over 25 years, so I would chalk this one up as old age. Also in 2023, a Cuban false chameleon, a female that I bought as a pair with another male, of course, passed away. Now this one is a pretty sad one, and nothing that could have been done on anyone's part. I tried to breed these animals because these actually weren't even technically Cuban false chameleons. It was an Anolis species, a red-throated anole that wasn't even formally described yet. So I wanted to produce these animals in captivity because the only way you can get them is wild caught. And we're going to talk a lot about wild caught in a few minutes. So I tried to produce them. Unfortunately, Cuban false chameleons, or this Anolis species, are rather violent when they try to breed, and the females are quite a bit smaller than the males. And I put the male and the female together, and it was that quick. There's nothing I could have done to separate them. The male broke the female's leg, just was very violent, and I separated them immediately, but the damage was done. And there's really nothing you can do to repair a leg like that, so unfortunately, we euthanized her, and she was fed to a snake. I know that might seem crazy, but I'd rather not waste an animal that I knew was healthy. She was a healthy animal, just broke her leg, and I didn't want her to suffer. And that brings us to our last one of 2023, and this one was actually my fault. There are 2 on this list that are my fault, and this one definitely was. I had a Colombian rainbow boa. You can see in this video, I made a whole setup for it in 2021 when I got the animal, and in 2023, I was thawing out rats for feed day, or I had help doing it anyway, and the rat that she was fed was too big. And I saw it and I knew it, and I thought, you know what, she can digest it. Snakes can take really big meals, like much bigger than you'd think. We always say make sure that the rat isn't wider than the snake, and that's, a precautionary thing. You see in the wild that snakes that are this big eat antelope that are this big, right? So I figured she'd pass it and it would be no problem. She passed away 2 days later. This is something that, truthfully, I don't know what I could have done to get her regurgitated, but I should have contacted a vet. I knew after she was fed, I wasn't the one who fed her, that the meal was too big, so this one is on me. And even if it's someone who's helping me to feed animals, it's still my fault because I'm the one who's overseeing. So I'm not deferring blame. Yeah, not real happy about this one. So that's the 3 in 2023. 2024 was a bad year. And the reason is I got some animals that were wild caught. And when you buy wild caught animals, there's a whole video of it right here, which I did, I think 100 videos ago actually, about how wild-caught animals are more susceptible to die. The reason I was getting wild-caught animals is because I wanted to really ramp up my breeding, but I didn't want to do like leopard geckos and ball pythons. Everyone's doing those. I wanted to do stenodactylus and carpet chameleons and uroplatus. Either way, those are the 3 animals that died this year, and the problem is you can only get them wild-caught. When they come in wild caught, they come in full of parasites and they're likely to die. And even if you bring them into a vet, or at least get the vet to prescribe you what you're supposed to give them, sometimes it's too late. So the first one to die was Violet, my carpet chameleon. This one sucked. I love carpet chameleons. I really want to get more. It's impossible in Canada to find them captive bred. You don't. And even the importers have said to me these exact words. Yep, they come in, they lay eggs because we get them in coming gravid, and then they roll over and die. So I knew there was a possibility that she would pass before she laid the eggs because she was gravid. Unfortunately, she did pass. I tried to cut her open and get the eggs, and they weren't going to survive. So this one for sure is she was probably full of parasites, and I should have been more proactive in getting her to a vet, although I was told she was treated. So this is just a case of, buy captive bred, but the whole point of buying the wild caught is to make captive bred. This is the same story with another animal, my uroplatus, Willow. Willow is beautiful. She came in super dehydrated. I got her in, I got her hydrated. I made sure that she had everything she needed. She was treated. Again, I was told. And then eventually I filmed B-roll with her. Literally the B-roll you're seeing right here was filmed in the morning. And then at night, she was gone. She just in her enclosure at the bottom of the enclosure. And she was kept quarantined because she was rather new. I only had her for a couple months. So she was upstairs, but there was other reptiles kind of in the same sort of area that were also in quarantine, and they were fine. So it wasn't like it was too dry. It definitely wasn't. She was, our whole thing was hydration. We were really on top of hydration. She was eating. This one I just don't know. It might have been something that she came in with, or maybe there was an injury that I didn't know about, but I mean, RIP Willow. We actually ended up getting another animal that was farmed, and we made sure that this animal was treated for parasites. So we do have another uroplatus fantasticus. This one's a male, and he's doing really great, and we've had him longer already than we ever had Willow. Carrying on with the same theme, stenodactylus. I talked about stenodactylus all the time, and unfortunately, not only me, but everybody else that I bought stenos from, this exact shipment that came into Canada, all of us had some deaths. So I know for sure it was something to do with the fact that they're brought in wild caught. And this is the sad part. If you bring in wild caught animals, the reason they're so much cheaper is because they're gonna die. I mean, it's just cheaper to bring them in. If you bring them in from whatever country, in the Middle East is where they're from, it's a lot cheaper to do it like that. If you produce them in captivity, it takes a lot more work to do. And there's that guarantee, or not guarantee, but more likelihood of them being healthy. So that's why. So I wanted to bring them in to produce captive bred ones. Unfortunately, we had a die off here. I know that a bunch of my other friends had a die off, and literally every single person who got from that shipment had a bunch of those animals pass away. I still think stenodactylus are amazing. Just unfortunately, some of ours passed. 2 more in this year. Persephone was a fire ball python. I have no idea how old she was. I know for sure she started to produce eggs in 2009. So this animal was, coming up on 15 years old, basically. We retired her as a breeder. I had her for a few years breeding still, and then I decided once she was producing clutches of about 4 or 5, that, we better kind of stop doing that. So we had her. She was kind of a pet only. I opened up the enclosure and she was gone. She was 15 almost. I think this one was an old age thing, although they can sometimes live to 20. I mean, same thing with humans, right? If a 70-year-old dude has a heart attack, like sometimes they live to 100, sometimes we live till 70. Unfortunately, Persephone passed. Really sad, but this one I'm almost positive was an old age thing. And then the second that was my fault, a Brazilian rainbow boa. So the first one was a Colombian rainbow. This one's a Brazilian. I was so excited to have this animal. Like, of all the deaths of any of the animals that I've ever had in terms of reptiles, this one probably was the one that frustrated me the most, for sure. I had help taking care of my reptile collection. And generally, water being filled is the biggest priority, especially for rainbow boas. And this rainbow boa was on a misting system. So she had an enclosure that kept humidity really well. Then I found that the misting system was empty. The reservoir had run out and was not replaced with water. And there was no water in the water bowl. And I came down and she was dead in the water bowl. So this is, again, my fault because I am responsible for all the animals in my collection. And since then, there has been a complete change in how reptiles are taken care of here, which takes a lot more time, but in my opinion, is worth it. So I would recommend that you hire help if you have big collections, but at the end of the day, you know, it's still your responsibility. So of all the animals, that was like the toughest one for me, probably. All right, 2025. I know we're only a few weeks in, and you guys know what happened. I already talked about this in this video right here. Basically, Mr. Grumpy. I got in emerald tree boas at the very beginning of last year, 2024. This animal I brought to the vet countless times, had countless prescriptions made out to this animal, had hookworm and other things, and we treated and treated and treated. And just about a year to the day, like a few days off, this animal passed away. So the other animal that I got in this shipment, because these were farmed animals that were imported, came in full of parasites. The female we treated, she's doing great. She's robust, she's big, she wants to eat all the time. Fantastic. This animal just started to lose weight, and I brought this animal to the vet over and over and over again. There's a whole story about it, right? In the video that I talked about, it eventually passed. So unfortunately, Mr. Grumpy is no longer with us. And those are the animals that have passed away in my care. I might call this like all the animals that I've killed or whatever, but I mean, you guys understand that YouTube works, right? We're trying to get eyes on this and make sure that you guys know what happened. So all in all, animals are going to die. That isn't your fault. It's just, you know, something that isn't diagnosed. Perhaps old age is another thing, but there are some times where it is your fault, and you just have to take ownership of that because it will help teach you a lesson. And sometimes you have to reorganize your entire operation. But to me, having animals die under my watch that is my fault is unacceptable. And you'll never see that ever again. Let us know in the comment section below. Has this ever happened to you? Have you had animals die? What lessons did you learn, and what can you teach the other people reading the comments? Of course, thanks to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. Please hit like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. And as always, I do videos on Mondays and Thursdays. So I'll see you in the next one.